Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to another segment of Recovery Live Global. We're here at the studio. I got my engineer over there. I got Miss Emily here, Miss Emily Lane today. And, Recovery Live birthed back when COVID hit, the pandemic, and we was not able to actually go to physical meetings. So I decided to just birth Recovery Live Global at home, in my office, and we just went live. And since then, I've met others. I've met the engineers and different people that took Recovery Live to another level. So now we're in a studio, and I thank you for my audience just tuning in. Let's give them a hand, man. They coming in, they listening in. And we've been talking about recovery. I have Miss Emily Lane with me today. I met her at a training, and she had so much synergy, energy, that I said, you know what, I need you on the show. I need you on the show. I need you on the show. And so I invited her to the show that we can duel as a team, talk about recovery. I'm in recovery, we in recovery, and recovery is a tough topic because people don't talk about it because of the stigma that's associated with it. People don't want to talk about it. And so at some of your universities, they have classes and they have trainings and preparing people to work in social work, human services, and things like that. But most of the classes that's out there is addiction studies. So they have more addiction studies trainings than recovery study trainings. And so what I want to do is break the stigma and let people know that recovery is possible and you can get in recovery. And for those that's in recovery, don't have to put a mask on because of the stigma and then not talk about it. And so I'm here today, Recovery Live Global. I got Miss Emily, and I said that before, and she's here. And guess what? She ain't charging us nothing.
No, absolutely not.
She said, hey, Mr. Washington, I'll come, and I'll just let the Spirit lead me and her as we talk about it. So, Miss Emily, when you think about recovery, where did your recovery start?
It actually started back in 2012 when I lost my sister to heroin overdose. She overdosed at home. And I knew I was an addict just from taking pills in high school, started smoking weed and cigarettes back when I was 12 and 13, super young, drinking. And it wasn't until I was heavily on the pills that I said, you know what, I want to do something different. Because the pills led me also to heroin. And my first rehab stay was in 2013, November. So about a year of addiction. I went to rehab my first time. And that was, 10 years ago. And my addiction has been a struggle. It's funny you mentioned COVID, because that's actually my last final hoorah when I said, you know what, I need to get clean. I need to stay clean. And I'm going to do whatever I can to do that. I went into another rehab, my umpteenth time in the last 10 years going to rehab, and I wanted it this time.
Okay.
It wasn't, I'm going to get so strung out in the parking lot before I go in. It was, I'm getting clean, and then I'm going to go do this. It was a 3-week program.
Okay.
So, needless to say, I did get 2.5 years clean and sober during that time, and I had a small couple-month relapse last fall.
Okay.
But I jumped right back on the wagon, and that's when I really started going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. I got myself a sponsor. I started working the steps, basically doing all the things I never did in those 10 years of, quote, being in recovery, which just going to meetings is not enough.
Okay.
For me, it never was. I would go to a meeting every day, but that, I'd get some tools. I'd get to hear the experience, strength, and hope. But until I really wanted to be clean and to stay clean and to have a better life and change my life is when things started changing.
Yes, interesting that you said that you had experienced treatment before, but it didn't kick in until you came to a point in your world that you really wanted it.
Yeah.
The tenacity of really wanting it sometimes is what it really take. Sometimes you gotta. I heard a saying that say you gotta want it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I can want it because of my mom. I can want it because of my kids. I can want it because of my job. I can want it because of my wife. I can want it because of status quo.
Right,
I can
right.
want it. So it's a lot of motivations
Oh, yeah.
that can push us to want it. But the true, real, heartfelt motivation and wanting it need to really like come from me. You know, the drive. It need to be almost like an intrinsic motivation rather than an extrinsic motivation, because extrinsic motivations that will want me to go there and make me get the help and things, then the extrinsic motivation got to stay with me, because soon as the extrinsic motivation go to sleep
Yeah.
or take a breath
Yeah.
or take a breather, if that's my motivation from the outside, then when they take a breath and stop pushing me, then I fall into that dark hole again.
And that's what it really boiled down to for me was I made that choice and decision. I don't want to die.
Okay.
The drugs out there are just changing, and they're killing people left and right. I was dating, you found out this when we were in our course, I was dating someone for a couple months back in May, and he got high and relapsed and tried hiding it, which I can get. You know, I've done that. I've was ashamed and embarrassed of a relapse, or I got high or I used and I didn't want to tell anyone. But when I found out, I had to cut it off, just because protection of myself, my recovery, and I prayed every day could get it. Well, 2 weeks ago, he passed away.
Wow.
And
2 weeks
it's
ago?
About 2 weeks ago, I just went to his celebration of life on Monday. It was Monday. And it's devastating. I mean, with my family, my sister was a year older than me, so it's just me now. And then with his family, he was an only child, had a 10-year-old son. So the will to want to live has to be stronger than the need and desires to want to keep getting high. And I know for me, this disease of addiction, it wants me dead. It wants me 6 feet under. I have overdosed more times I can count on my two hands. Again, finding my sister from her overdose was superbly traumatic. And so wanting to change my life is what's going to keep me clean at the end of the day. Doing the things that are uncomfortable, doing things I've never done before. You know, being in a women's group, you know, it can be intimidating. You can get nervous. You know, I was definitely nervous in the beginning when I started going, but now I consider those women my family.
Okay.
They're there for you, and it's amazing.
Wow. So we talked about briefly where it started. You said you had some hiccups down the road, down the line. And then you talked about an overdose more times than on my fingers. I guess that's a lot. I guess an overdose is when I put more substance within the body than the body can stand, and then the body can go into a hyperventilating stroke, all types of stuff. Yeah. They got a new kit out now called Narcan.
Narcan.
Did they ever use? Did you?
Oh, yeah.
So you familiar with the Narcan? They told me that Narcan can save it could turn an overdose around.
It's a reversal.
But it can't turn a death around. You know, so if they could catch it. I got one in my car.
I've got one in my car, 5 in my house. You never know.
Yeah, I got one in my car. I got some at my church. I got some on my job. because you never know when it can happen just like that. And this particular solution, I got the one that you deposit in the nostrils.
In the nose, yeah.
And when you deposit in the nose, it could turn around.
Yeah.
It could turn an overdose around like immediately.
I was in a drug house, and someone ran in and said, so and so's ODing right in the front lawn. So and so's ODing. Everyone else just standing there. Maybe didn't know what to do. Maybe they were scared, but I knew I had Narcan on me, and ran out to my car and gave it to them, and someone did it and saved his life.
Just like that.
Yep.
Man.
Yep.
Yeah, so people panic. You know what I'm saying? And people don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. They don't know what to do. So that opioid crisis that's out here, it's a tough thing. And that Narcan, whoever invented it and came out with it, have saved. I was driving on Gratiot and East Grand Boulevard. There is a building sit right next to the flower shop, and it says QBH.
Yes. Yeah.
And he got some statistics wrote on the outside of his building, right there on Gratiot and the Boulevard. Drive by there and look at the statistics. And it talks about how Narcan is used to turn around an overdose. I mean, the fire department have it on the fire trucks.
Yeah, police.
The police have it in the police cars. The EMS drivers have it in the EMS trucks. And we need more education about that, because you never know. Yeah. You just never know. If you have a family member that suffers with opioid drug addiction, it's good to have a Narcan kit around, because you never know if they're going to relapse and if they're going to need it. Our children need to be educated on it so that they can say their grandmama. Their grandmama need to be educated on it so she could save a grandson. A husband need to be educated on so he could save a wife. And now I'm looking at it. We need to bring it into the church community, because we think sometimes, because of our belief in the Lord Jesus Christ and our relationships with Christ, that we don't have crises like this.
Far from the truth.
You can take somebody's medication that don't belong to you and have a reaction, at the church. And then if people in the church was educated, was trained.
Right.
Well, you might be out there and you want to support the Recovery Live Global efforts. You can do so by purchasing one of our Recovery Live Global t-shirts. So I'm wearing one. If you look at it, it's here. We're moved into merchandise. So you can call us at 313-694-2140. That's 313-694-2140. And just say, hey, I want to support the ministry. I want to support Recovery Live Global by purchasing one of our Recovery Live Global t-shirts. And I had shared with those, if you live in the metropolitan area and you want a t-shirt, I'll deliver it. I'll deliver it myself. There's no cost for deliverance. So call us and purchase your Recovery Live Global t-shirt in support of the Recovery Live Global show. So, support us. I'd like to welcome you back to Recovery Live Global. This is a global ministry platform that we could talk about recovery, addiction, how it happened, what happened, how it is today. And we have with us today Miss Emily Lane, who have gracefully joined our platform and show to talk about recovery. And we want to reach a audience and a platform out there that don't get a chance to come and sit in rooms like this where recovery is actually talked about and lived.
Right.
People don't get a chance to get up and close like this, because most people that's in recovery is shadowed, is hid. it's a mask on, it's a tie on, it's a suit. You know what I'm saying? Because of the stigma associated with it, people don't get up and close and in rooms that we could actually talk about the depths of addictions and how that thing happened. It was said during our commercial break that sometimes you can move because of the fluidness of addiction. It can move from one to another to another.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you'll move even over to the legalized and the recreational alcohol and marijuana that's out there. Let's talk about that part.
Sure.
And see, let's talk about that part.
So I started with the opiates, like I was saying, in high school with pills. After my sister passed away, I started attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And that I had been going to for a couple months. You meet different people. Not all people are there for recovery. And that's when I was introduced to heroin personally. And that was a super downhill slope. Like I was saying, I got clean from opiates in May of 2020 when I'm like, I'm done with this. And since then, too, I've been on what's called the Vivitrol shot.
Okay.
Which it's a once-a-month injection that is actually a opiate blocker. It helps with urges and cravings and actually helps with generalized depression, and it helps your moods. It's like out of sight, out of mind. Like I went and got my shot on Friday. I would forget, until I see it on my calendar for the next time. So I've been clean. When I came to my relapse last fall, especially still being on that Vivitrol shot, I thought I could handle using cocaine again.
Okay.
And I actually could for a couple months, just doing it on the weekends. But then Friday and Saturday turned into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then it turned into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And next thing I knew it, I was snorting cocaine every day. It's just the progression of the disease. And I know the disease in me wants more and more and more.
Okay.
So once that wasn't enough, I went to go pick up some Coke, and someone was there and said, do you want to hit this? It was a crack pipe loaded with crack cocaine. And especially since already using, I justified in my mind, well, I'm already doing this, what's the harm? Or thinking, well, I thought I could handle this much, and I could probably handle this much. It's like all a mind game. And I took it, and I hit it, and then from there on, I was smoking crack every day, spending all my money. I was up to $100 to sometimes $300 a day, addiction and a problem. And I would justify.
$300 a day?
Yeah.
What type of job did you have to
I was just going to say, I'm self-employed. And
oh, right. Okay.
So the dangers of that is I'm responsible for other people. I have people working for me. So if the owner, I could have lost my customers. I could have lost my employees. It's very dangerous, and it, again, thinking, well, I got this handled because it's my money. It's my company. It's okay. And again, that's the disease that was just completely telling me it was okay, and I should have known better. So since getting in trouble back in November with that, once again, the judge actually told me while I was on bond I could utilize my medical marijuana card. So even not doing opiates, and then now I'm not doing crack or cocaine, well, now I'm smoking weed. And in the beginning, I'm like, well, it's no big deal. It's just weed.
And it's legal.
And it's legal. Yeah. I have a prescription. I can go to the dispensary and give them some money, and that's my medicine. Starting to go to meetings again and being in recovery starting in January, February, I really had to start putting some serious thought into what do I want out of recovery? Do I want to, excuse my language, half-ass my recovery and substitute not this drug but for this drug? And I would just, it's literally the addict thinking that if I'm not doing this, it's still okay to do this because it's a prescription. But it didn't take much time for me to realize that even the marijuana was taking over my life. The money I was spending on it, the time sitting there rolling up my joints, or the hours I would sit on the couch when I should have been working and just utilizing the marijuana, smoking with the bowls, all of it, just being in that lifestyle I was still in active addiction. So I made that choice in March. I want to be abstinent from all mood or mind altering substances. And I finally put it down, got rid of my paraphernalia, passed along stuff to people, that I already knew had their med card and they're okay smoking. And it's like, I just know for me, I can't handle anything because it's just putting a chemical in my mind. I will eventually probably tell myself that I can handle drugs.
Again. Yeah, it's something about that, how that worked. They told me statistics says that when I pick up another substance rather than my drug of choice, then it can lead me back to my drug of choice.
Almost like a gateway drug.
It'll take you back there. A lot of times individuals are not satisfied with the tertiary, secondary substances that they can use because they're satisfied with the primary. And statistics says that you can fool around and get back to your primary by opening the door with a tertiary or secondary. And so it's important sometimes to the word abstinence. Yeah. And they told me that there's another term out here now to say abstinence don't equal recovery. Yeah. Like you could be abstinence, but you're not in recovery because your mind have not changed as it relates to the processes. Yeah. And so the goal is, that's what is cognitive behavior therapy, treatment, and motivational interviewing have bust the ceiling out of the modalities that we're using now to treat people with substance use disorders. Because if I can change the way I'm thinking, I can change the way I'm behaving.
Absolutely.
And the thought is the cause of it all.
Yep.
And that's why you could get flicked by the police and they'll give you a ticket for impaired driving. And the reason they could give you a ticket for impaired driving because your central nervous system and the brain communicating with the central nervous system is impaired. Yeah. When I take a beer, take a drink, hit a joint, hit a smoke, or whatever. So they could give you a ticket for buzz driving. They could give you a ticket for impaired driving. But they're not telling you not to do it. The law says okay, but then don't drive.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that a lot of people, at the restaurants, Red Lobsters, come on now, Cracker Barrel sell liquor now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I did not know that.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So now, when I go order my chicken and my fish and my liver and onions, alcohol is on the menu. Yep. And so, they just go together. It say food and spirits right on the door. Yeah. When you walk in and say food and spirits, what is they talking about? Yeah. They're talking about food and alcohol. If you're not careful, you'll go to a Cracker Barrel, Red Lobsters, wherever, and you'll order your shrimps and your lobsters and your food, and you'll also order a drink to go along with it, not knowing that the police park right outside of Red Lobsters. Right. Yep. As soon as you get through and come out of Red Lobsters and get in your car, whoop, 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 and they pull you over, and now you're impaired. You would think you're not because you just had whatever you had.
One or two,
And one or two to a person that their metabolism don't break it down as fast as another person. And now you done fooled around and got a ticket or DUI, OWI, and now you're in court. And once you go to court, the judge treats you like you a full-blown alcoholic. Yeah. And you ain't did nothing but had a drink at the restaurant with your shrimps and lobsters. So they throw the book at you and treat you like a full-blown alcoholic and tell you, now you got to pay this fine, you got to go to this meeting, you got to go to this treatment,
these
you got to do
classes.
this, all these classes, you got to do all this kind of stuff just to get your license back. You got to wear alcohol tether, you got to do all this stuff. And they treat people like a full-blown addict when all they did was went to Red Lobsters with their wife and had some shrimps and steaks and had a few drinks. So we have to be really careful. It's going to come with education.
Sure.
It's going to come with education. So that's one of the main missions of Recovery Lab Global is education, inspiration, and encouragement. That we could come on to platforms like this. And that go my camera right there. When I look at this camera, I'm looking at Detroit, Chicago, Florida, Jamaica. I'm looking at the globe. So I want you, Miss Emily. I know we've been talking and dealing and talking and dealing, but there's a globe of people out there. There's a young lady who got her cell phone in her hand, and on her way to the spot, what they call traps or spots or whatever they call it in the day, dope houses and stuff like that. You got a man or a child that's parents had a party last night, and they fell asleep and left bottles all over the basement, and they about half full. They got a corner of alcohol still left in the jars, and these people, you got a person that's a senior citizen, and it seemed like their medication just ain't working, and they want to try something different. What can we look at? What could we say to those listening audience? So I want you to look in the camera and just talk to the globe, and leave something, give them something.
I will say, recovery is absolutely beautiful. You get out of it what you put in. Again, the want to change your life and live a better life and do something different is hard. I will say that. If it was easy, everyone would do it. I know from struggling with addiction for 10 plus years, this is the happiest, most peaceful I have ever been in my whole entire life. And again, abstinence does not equal recovery. I'm living proof. I thought I could just not pick up and not use drugs or not drink, and that I would be okay, and that I could live a normal life. But addiction runs in my family, so I had to work a little harder at recovering than probably most people. For me, it was trial and error. If you find something that works for you, stick with it. They say in some programs, do 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, someone who believes in you and wants to help you in your recovery, and work the program. You know, you can go to meetings all day long, but until you're learning how they really truly learn about themselves and live their lives, that's when the change really happens. So instead of doing 90 meetings in 90 days, I did, I think, 135 meetings in 90 days. So I really pushed this time around, hopefully for good, to do the things that were even uncomfortable, because it's worth it. Recovery is just absolutely beautiful. It's not always sunshine and butterflies, you know, life on life's terms. We still could lose our job or get in fights with our significant others, or our kids are mad at us, or we're mad at our kids. You know, just because we're clean doesn't mean life is just grand now and that everything's just normal. We still have life on life's terms. It's just how we react to it, how we deal. For me, I just choose not to pick up drugs, no matter what. Amen. No matter what, Amen. My life can't afford it anymore. So.
Well, I'd like to take a moment to say thank you.
You're welcome, of course.
For coming on.
Yes.
And being open and honest and sharing with our Recovery Live community, those out in the Recovery Live world. that's going to be tuning in from week to week and seeing what we're talking about as it relates to recovery.
Sure.
So I take my hat off, if I had a hat on, and say thank you, Miss Emily,
You're welcome.
for gracing our show with your testimony and the things that you have learned about recovery. And hey, you're gonna have to come back.
I was gonna say I'm open for whenever, anytime.
You're gonna have to come back, and as things progress and move
Sure.
along, that we can follow recovery.
Yeah.
This has been another segment of Recovery Live Global. We thank you for tuning in Tuesday night, 7 o'clock in the p.m. And we thank you for Recovery Live Global. If you like what you see, share it, send it, share it, like it. If you feel that you wanted to give to this platform, there is a methods that you can use to give. If you like to see us grow and move forward, then you can do that too. So we thank you, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday. This has been another segment of Recovery Live Global. Thank you.